When I first began the gallery, I think everyone working on the gallery has a different perspective. The sorts of stories that I really wanted to tell were archaeological stories. And to a large part, I think this is because I was the main field archaeologist. You know, I'm someone who has a project, who goes out on excavations every summer, and I wanted to give visitors a sense of that. My favorite object in the gallery is a sword, an iron sword, which comes from Luristan and was made probably sometime between 1100 BC and 1000 BC. And that actually makes it one of the oldest swords, one of a collection of the oldest swords from Iran that we know that are made out of iron. It's actually a really, really early example of ironworking. Before I started working on the gallery, I didn't actually know that much about iron during this period of time. I work in this period of time. I direct excavations just north of Hasanlu in the modern-day Republic of Azerbaijan of a similar period site. But I never really spent too much time thinking about the transition from bronze to iron. So what's really the most significant thing about this sword is that it represents the point of transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. So of course, from about 3000 to about 1000 BC or so, bronze is the material that is the most used in the Middle East. And then starting by say 1200 BC, 1000 BC, suddenly you start to have iron. And certainly after 900 BC, iron becomes common. This sword comes from exactly that point of transition. And so it tells us something about this major shift in technology. When people first start using iron, originally, for a really long time, it's actually this very rare metal that only shows up in things like jewelry, right? You know, it seems like a very special material. So you have rings made out of iron, you have pendants made out of iron. And then obviously later on it becomes totally ubiquitous and we use it for every kind of normal tool. And you know, we don't think of iron as being special at all. It's just something that rusts, and you know, it's the fourth most common element in the Earth's crust. So you know, there's nothing amazing about it. So what you have with the sword is almost this moment of transition. You have someone outside of the area of Luristan, where this is found in the Zagros Mountains of Iran, who have smelted and forged some iron, and they've sent that to the site in the form of some kind of iron sheets, and the metal workers at the site get access to this new material, and they want to figure out what to do with it. And so what they do with it is basically make this weapon in a totally weird way. Like not the way that blacksmiths later on would make an iron sword, but instead they're using these techniques that they'd use for other metals. They're improvising as well as they can in the face of this totally new material. And so what's really interesting about the sword is that you can almost still see this now. First of all, the sword itself is decorated, and so it has a really interesting decoration on the hilt. It was probably made entirely for ceremonial purposes. It probably was never actually used in warfare, because the way it was made probably would have resulted in a sword which was really too fragile to be used in warfare. But at the same time, the technique they used seems to have preserved the sword better than most of the iron we have. And so even though it's the oldest iron object on display, it actually is a lot less rusted and a lot less corroded than most of the iron that we have.